You didn't want me. Oh,
Ready?
we're good? Yep.
3, 2, 1. And the Oscar goes to nobody, because nobody wins with the Oscars. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Taylor. This is the 76th episode of First Dates with Moire. I'm your host, as I probably just mentioned, Ian Taylor. Join me tonight is my wonderful co-host and musician, artist, filmmaker, film editor, Devin King, and we have a very special guest with us tonight, returning guest Bernard Petit. Bernard, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about what you do?
Well, the third, fourth, fifth time. Okay, so my name is Bernard Petithomme. Originally from the Bahamas. My full background is in the creative arts space. I'm a painter, a thespian of stage, and also aspiring filmmaker and screenwriter. I came here to Canada, specifically in London, Ontario, to study advanced filmmaking and visual effects and editing for post-production at Fanshawe College. And here I am once again, here with you guys to engage in this conversation about movies, whether we like them or not.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. That
And
was
you
better
are
than mine.
specifically the one friend that I have who really follows up with the Oscars. Like, I believe this is your second year seeing every single nominated film.
This is my second consecutive year actually watching every nominated film on the ballot. But that is specifically due to the fact that we've moved everything now onto digital, where in the past we were only able to watch the films in the theater and then had to wait 3 months to access them on DVD or some physical media. But since the pandemic, the Oscars has changed their rules a little bit, and they've just been distributing things. The studios have been distributing things online, whether it be through Amazon, VOD, the short films you can find, and some of them you can find on YouTube. And some of the streamers actually acquire some of the short films as well. So it's just been much more easy to access all these films than it was in previous years, you know?
Yeah, which is a blessing and a curse, I think, for the film industry. Because on the one hand, more people are actually watching these films because they're accessible. On the other hand, they're not getting, the numbers or bums and seats into the movie theaters, which is, I think, still their primary source of revenue. But I guess everything's kind of, shifting toward digital. And yeah, this was one of the few years I was able to actually follow up with these films. I wouldn't say I'd go out of my way to avoid watching these films, but I try not to give all my attention to whatever the Academy's doing. I try to follow my own interests in the film world. But
Fair
it
enough,
was
fair enough.
there was an
However,
interesting roster this year. I'll say that.
However, I would say honestly, for me, because the smaller films that usually award season tend to focus on don't usually get the massive marketing push that the massive tentpole studio projects tend to. So I wouldn't have known about a lot of these films unless it was award season, because I don't have the time to sort of dig into what's hot at the festivals throughout the year. So usually by the end of the year, when it comes down to award season, that's usually when I find out what's got all the heat behind it, whether it be from another country or from the U.S. North American domestic market. So for me, I that's why I kind of follow. I still follow award season because these smaller films, I know by no stretch of the imagination would I be able to access them or know about them unless they actually put a strong marketing push behind them.
Yeah, no, and actually, this is one of the few instances where I think the Academy is actually doing its job in bringing these smaller films or these really noteworthy films to the spotlight. Because I feel like they, for the last few years, have been kind of highlighting the same kind of things over and over. Where two of the films tonight here that we were going to be talking about really, um, I thought were really worth seeing, and I really appreciated the fact that I did see them, and I may not have seen them otherwise.
Two of them.
Well, yeah, well,
I think I think I think
Ooh.
everybody would
the
have
third one I saw
managed.
anyway.
Yeah. I think everyone would have managed to have seen Encanto at some point.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it.
Disney, like
So
Disney pretty
that that
much.
that, that doesn't count as
Yeah,
in
that's
in
what
the
I mean. But
conversation. Yeah.
with two of the films, like they're two indie films that I otherwise might not have encountered
That's
that
true.
I thought were really worth seeing.
Yeah.
Where Encanto, who didn't see that,
Yeah, that's true. A
right?
lot of people apparently, but yeah, you have a point.
Well, I thought it was really well done. I mean, we'll get into spoilers later,
Spoilers!
but
Everybody knows your thoughts by
yeah,
now. Alright,
but
speaking of spoilers, all of these films will be a spoiler discussion, so these films came out very recently. Almost all of them, actually, all of them are on streaming services. Coda is on Apple TV Plus, Drive My Car is on HBO Max, and Encanto is on Disney Plus. If you have not seen these films and you do not want to be spoiled, please watch them or jump to the time frames below. You won't be disappointed, but we will be spoiling these films, especially Encanto and Drive My Car, I think, very heavily. So do keep that in mind. I just realized we haven't discussed who's going to introduce which film. I'd personally like to introduce Drive My Car, but I don't know what you
I'll do
guys want to
Coda.
do. You got it.
okay, I'll do Encanto, I suppose.
You got it, Devin. We don't talk about it. But we do talk
Right.
about
It-
Coda. Bernard, take it away.
So I'm just going to take a little blurb from IMDb, or actually Wikipedia.
Special
So
thanks
Coda
to
is
whoever.
actually a film featuring the lead character Ruby, who is the only hearing member of a deaf family from Gloucester, Massachusetts. She's about 17 years old. She works mornings before school to help her parents and the brother keep their fishing business afloat. But in joining her high school's choir club, our lead protagonist Ruby finds herself drawn to both her duet partner and her talent, her latent passion for singing. Anybody want to lead the conversation?
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
just want to say I really loved this film. As someone who really enjoys and listens to music, um, there was a lot of things that this touched on that I really appreciate and really connected with. And it's just an interesting contrast looking into, this kind of situation where there are real people who live with, deaf people. They have a deaf family, but they're the only hearing member. And I feel like it, highlights what that kind of life is like. And I actually saw a reaction video of an actual Coda um, person reacting to the film, and he signs basically everything he says just out of instinct at this point, even though he hears just fine. But I thought it was really just interesting look into this world. And I also love the obscure music she's into. One of them, this record she has is called The Shags, which is an
Hmm.
interesting piece of outsider art. Basically, the story behind this group, and this is just a little tangent, but it's kind of fun. It's this band made of three girls, three sisters who were all like just around 10 years old or something, or even less when they wrote the album. And they're kind of terrible, but more in like a naive sense, like they're not trying to be. And the whole reason that they came together and created this album, this one album, is because their father was told by like a fortune teller that that his daughters would become like one of the most famous bands in the world. So he basically just got them together to make music and then record this one album. And they're kind of terrible, but in very endearing way. And it's just cool to see like that in a film, just them talking about this album. Um, and that's really like just like one throwaway scene, but I just appreciated the reference, I suppose.
No, I get that for sure, and I think we also need to discuss like the crazy behind the scenes information about this movie. Like first off, the main actress, who's played by Emilia Jones, did
Hmm.
not know sign language before starring in this movie. She actually learned it from scratch. If I'm not mistaken, the same issue was with the director, who actually had translators on board, but the director learned sign language anyways just to communicate with the actors effectively. And I
Hmm.
appreciate that
Non-hater.
like amount of passion and work kind of put into the behind the scenes and making of this movie. I thought it was okay. I thought the movie was alright. It, it kind of has the same issue I had with Belfast to an extent, where it feels just a little too sanitized and friendly, but this movie didn't bug me as much with that because with Belfast it tackled much more serious subject matter. So I felt like that film needed like a little more grit and teeth to it. And but this film's going for something much more simple and standard, so that tone doesn't bug me as much. But the plot of this movie feels like how everybody jokes about every 80 like bad music biopic ever. Or it's like, oh, this girl like really wants the scene, but her family doesn't really want her to get into it. And she has this big job that she needs to take, but she can't leave her family behind. And it narratively, it's very bare bones, which wouldn't bug me as much if it was like an interesting cinematic experience, because best picture to me implies that it's a picture. It could only be explored as a movie, as a visual image. And I wrote this in my review and said, I can't believe a movie about driving around in a car and practicing a play is more visually interesting than a girl learning how to sing in the beautiful countryside, because the presentation of the movie is so bland and something about it just feels off. Like they kind of made it with like motion smoothing in mind, or that process that kind of blurs the image and gives it the soap opera effect to make everything seem smoother than it actually is. It's just something felt
Well,
off about how the
I
movie
don't know if
looked. I
Okay,
that
can't
was
really
I don't know if that was a
pinpoint it.
setting on
okay.
your end or how you watched it might have affected it. I thought it was really well crafted in this sense. It felt just naturalistic. I
I
mean,
don't know about
I
that.
did
Maybe I
I
As
just
for
didn't
me,
watched it.
I know it's a remake of a French film, and I am curious how it compares to that.
Hmm.
yes,
And you
The
know,
French film is called La Famille Bélier. I think that's
yeah,
the original film. It was released in 2014, if I remember clearly.
yeah,
Yes.
and I'm curious how they compare. And there's also a discussion to be had about American remakes and then this taking all the notoriety for this story. But for what it's worth, I thought it was really well executed. I thought the acting of the father particularly was
Roy Kotze.
exceptional.
Hmm.
Like he was hilarious.
Yeah.
And especially the yeah, you have to put a helmet on that soldier. That whole scene just got me rolling.
Oh, the hospital scene when it's like,
And
you have to quit the act of sex. For how long? Forever. Okay, for 2 weeks. No, we can't do
n-
it.
no, no, well, whether there's that, but also when he thinks that the boy that she has over at his place that
Oh,
they were
yeah.
having sex when he's the one that caught them having sex, so he's visually trying to explain to him how to use a condom, and it's just hysterical. I
I
mean,
forgot about that.
that whole scene killed me, and the dad's really charismatic in that whole thing. Like you can tell he's like a really caring parent, but who can't help but just be himself. It is interesting though, like comparing this film to a film we looked at last week. We covered some films from the Ukraine. We looked at this film called The Tribe, which is told completely in Ukrainian sign language with no translation or subtitles whatsoever. And I think this film translates better. Not to put a pun on it, in terms of like its storytelling, but it is still an interesting kind of exercise in just visual, filmmaking. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know the point I was going with that, but I still think it's pretty decent. And I don't know if it deserves like Best Picture for that in and of itself, but I do think it's a solid film. Um,
Okay. So as for me, I don't see the Best Picture winner always having to be the film that utilizes every single sort of aspect of cinematic filmmaking, whether it's the sound, it's the cinematography, production design, all those kind of massive elements that tends to be woven together, making a piece. Because ultimately, you could some films are stronger in other places than others, and I think for this film actually won because it actually accomplishes, giving people that feeling that because a film can be an experiential sort of medium as
Yeah.
whereby some of it you gravitate towards the musical parts of it, you might be gravitating towards the actual visual parts of it, and some of it is performance and things like that. I think though the film is smaller than the likes of Dune and
Oh, yeah.
Power of the Dog, and those
Hmm.
ones which actually are much more grander in terms of scope and
mhm.
Budget.
all
Ju-
the other artistic elements. This film is
yeah,
more intimate and actually draws you in to the experience of the performances and the characters you learn to fall in love with, and it gives you
yeah,
that. It's just that's something that connects. It connected with not just the Academy, there's other audience members, everybody who I know that I share this film with. They responded to it right away. They just connected with it. Now I would say while Coda offers no major surprises narratively, I still found it to be a film for all audiences that are needing for something that's well written, story wise, and that is like totally, thoroughly heartwarming. I think
it
the work
is.
by the stellar cast, the telecast actually brings the little screenplay vividly to life with fine performances that touch on your soul and sticks to you. But I would say also, furthermore, that Coda offers more of what is needed in cinema today, which is representation of story featuring people uh, that are usually not seen on screen, which are people with disabilities. But it
Mm.
offers no surprises. There are moments of cliched resolutions within the different stories and all that. But I just think it's something that people probably just needed right now. You know, something that's simple, that gets the point across,
Yeah,
and
feel
the
good.
characters you just fall in love with.
Yeah, and that's fine, and it, it's a well acted, well sung, well performed generic story, but it is a generic story nonetheless. I kind of
Well,
a part of me
I
does
don't. I don't.
feel like because it's about the deaf community and it's a good, positive representation of the deaf community, but I feel like that's why people are giving this film maybe a bit more credit than it deserves. Like I don't want to sound like I hate the film because of that.
Oh,
It might
come
be
on.
my favorite aspect, but I it's just so it does nothing. It's okay to have a generic narrative. It's okay to have a narrative that isn't complicated or big in scope or anything along those lines. Just do something interesting with it. Do something with it that we
What
haven't
was
seen before.
uninteresting about it
No,
to you?
but
And I want to know.
you know what I found interesting is the fact that because it was set in a fishing town and there were working class issues presented as a subtext within the whole overarching story. You know, these were people who were deaf.
Yeah.
These weren't rich people. They
No.
still
No.
found a way to make do with the little
Mm.
means that they had because they were
Mm.
limited in terms of their, disability. But at the same time, they didn't see themselves as being totally handicapped, and they had some form of independence, but they still were kind of dependent on uh, their herring daughter,
Mm.
Yep.
and eventually they had to find a way how to come to a point where they had to let it go and let it fly and become their own people
Yeah.
Yeah,
without
it's
her.
like
And
You
that's
know,
it was like
yeah.
they were depending on her in a sense for being able to translate and all this, but it's exhausting on her end, and she's trying to do her own thing, become her own person. Like we've seen that story 1,000 times, but I think
I've
I don't
never
know
seen
what
it
the
in this way though.
well,
You know,
well, that's true. I think there's very
Oh.
little, if nothing, of this film that comes across as inauthentic. Like all this feels very grounded. It feels very human. And yeah, I really resonated with these characters, and I loved their dynamic. They really felt like a real family. Another thing that's worth noting in the cast here, you may have recognized the one actress in it. Um,
Ooh.
Marley Matlin,
yeah, Mari Matlin. I was just
I
blanking
love
on her
her.
name.
I
She
grew up watching her. I love her.
she won the Oscar back in the day for uh, a lesser known film called
Children
Children
of a
of a
Lesser
Lesser,
God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with
which is a
William Hurt. Rest
which
in
is a
peace.
kind of a damning title, which I find odd about it, but it is an interesting film, and she won the Oscar, first deaf person to ever win an Oscar for that performance,
Wow.
and I thought she was excellent in this just as well.
Yeah, she was
She
my
probably could
favorite.
have won one again
Yeah.
for
Honestly, yeah.
uh for this, but I also think the father, the actor that played him, absolutely deserved it. He's
Troy
very charismatic on
Kutzer.
screen.
Yeah, the parents are probably my favorite part about the movie. Like their relationship remind me a lot of like the relationship with my parents. Just their kind of back and forth nature. Their need for explicit things. It seems ridiculous, but they are just like two adults like trying to live a marriage while also dealing with being deaf, and that is there are problems of that. That's a pain enough. That process is a pain in the ass in of itself, but
Mhm.
add on top of that this language barrier, and that's a much more difficult process. And that part I elevated
Mhm.
to the most. I kind of wish more of the movie dragged to that and less of the whole. I just didn't really care about what the daughter was going through. Unfortunately, like she
Okay.
just wasn't
Well,
as
this
interested
is
with the
where I
family.
differentiate because I thought it was
Hmm.
really a good story on here. I didn't like the teacher actor when I first saw him, just because he came off as kind of a prick. But when you saw that he was really trying to, help her overcome things. Like there was a lot of situations where he was kind of being unforgiving of her despite her situation, and she could have explained that better. But I do like how they worked together to get her at Berkeley and that audition. Like that whole scene was genuinely emotionally impactful for me.
Hmm.
Um, I think that this does a, person trying to get into music story better than a lot of other films I've seen. Um,
Yeah.
which might be foreshadowing for a episode I have planned in the future centered on music
Ooh.
education. I'm not going to say too much more, but
Ah.
This
I would
this
say.
this easily could have been a contender for that episode, and um, I also like the fact that the one guy was wearing a King Crimson shirt at some point in prior. That
I knew
was that
you'd point
was
that out.
based,
That was
as Steve would say. But
based red pilled.
uh, I mean, no, I really like the little nods to music culture, I guess, because I'm a music nerd, so I
Hmm.
appreciated that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
choir
it was
was
nice.
something I did when I was like in elementary school, so I never got to it in like the high level. Then I didn't really have an interest in the high level, but I did do like band practice when I was in high school, so my experience was a little different. But
Now, here's a
there is
question.
something about overcoming personal problems and performing well that's true.
Do you think all of the singing was real? Because I know like her singing was real per se, but do you think it was performed live on camera?
Well, it could have been overdubs by them afterwards just to get a better
Yeah,
recording. It didn't seem like I didn't notice any like really obvious ADR. Maybe there was some here and there,
yeah,
but it seemed pretty authentic to me. It did sound like her singing. Like I'm usually pretty good at catching when
yeah.
the voice doesn't match the person.
It is her singing. I can't tell if there was overdubbing or not. At the very least, they did a good job hiding it. Like it's not as obvious as Bohemian Rhapsody. Just 30%
Oh
of his
gosh,
singing was covered by Queen himself,
no,
and it's
yeah,
so obvious in certain scenes. But here, like they definitely, if there was ADR done, which I don't know if there is or not, music experts, please let us know in the comments and remind me why I suck for hating this film, which I don't hate it. Please let us know. I'm very curious about that, and it was her singing for sure. And yeah, like that final audition scene was, very touching and a great scene in the movie, but I don't know. I wish I could connect with this film more than I did. I guess is a good way to put it. I can't stress enough how much this movie feels like it should be on Disney Plus. That's my review
hmm
of Coda.
Is it because it was on Apple Plus and you had to get another
It's
Well,
subscription
just an
to
well,
watch
Apple
it and
it
then
Plus
by
wasn't
yourself?
subscription.
made by Apple though. It was originally made independently, and Apple acquired it. I think it was Sundance, one of the previous uh
Mm,
That sounds about
festivals
right.
last year.
Yeah.
So because I think Netflix almost got it, but Apple ended up getting it, which made Apple the first streaming service in Oscar history to actually win Best Picture. Because I know
Oh yeah.
Netflix and Amazon have been campaigning for a decade now to try to get that honor, but
Hmm.
Apple, few short years in, they ended up picking up that trophy
Yeah.
in the end. So they made history that night, being the first streaming service.
Suck at Power of the Dog. I actually like that movie, but a lot of people didn't. So
No, I like Ballad. I
hmm.
liked everything on the ballad, to be honest with you,
Yeah, that's
personally.
fair.
yeah, you are definitely the most informed person when it comes to any of these films where I've only heard speculation. I know our resident frog Steven hated that film, so I'm very curious to
Yeah,
see
because of what it's about, but it
oh
actually
sure.
handles the topic in an interesting way, but that's relevant, I guess. But
Well,
anyways, love you,
I'm
Steven.
I'm just curious where I'll
Let's talk
fall
about
when I
sometime.
have two friends whose like opinions or views I trust in terms of movies when they have complete opposites. I'm wondering what side of the fence I'll fall on when I finally go see it.
But did any scenes for you guys that you found at least the stronger scenes in the film or the most compelling? For me, I rather enjoyed the scene where Ruby went to see her brother Leo by the beach, and they were
Oh
having
yeah.
this back and forth exchange about her just leaving and him feeling so dwarfed in terms of his responsibility in the family because they treat her like she's the older sibling and him like the child because they won't and then he also criticized her for being so worried about how other people perceive the family instead of worrying about you know us uh trying to understand hearing people why they should maybe they should figure out how to deal with deaf people. I thought that was a strong sort of interaction in the film, a part I liked a lot. And also the
Yeah.
scene
Yeah.
with Troy Kutzer and the daughter. Uh, well, Troy Kutzer playing Frank and Ruby under the stars in the truck, on the truck, in the back of the truck. I thought that was a pretty good scene. Those are the two most effective scenes for me.
Oh
Nice.
yeah, when he sings to her and he has his like hands on her throat, which out of context might look threatening, but it's very
Hmm.
emotionally touching kind of scene because he's trying to hear the resonance in her voice and understand what she I don't know what makes her special, how she's expressing herself, which I did think that was a beautiful scene where he's there supporting her despite not being able to hear how she sounds. And it was also funny to see, or the one scene that he was pulling up, playing like really loud gangster rap,
Mm-hmm.
which you think they wouldn't normally enjoy, but he just likes the vibrations of the bass, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why he's playing it.
Yeah, that was
Which
interesting.
those scenes, I already mentioned the whole awkward conversation they had after he catches them, or the daughter catches them having sex, and he's trying to explain it to the guy that was over. I thought that scene was just hysterical. I couldn't stop laughing. I had to pause and walk away for a second and come back to it just because I couldn't stop laughing.
Well,
And
if
I
we're
think I
talking
made.
about funniest scene, I think the Tinder scene was pretty entertaining. Where they're like all
Oh,
trying to hook up for Tinder and try to get like the different family
that
members hooked up because we could do it together as a family. Like I thought that was a little weird, but also pretty funny. Because I've tried doing that kind of stuff with my dad or my brother before, like try to hook them up with dating profiles, and it's like this is the most awkward fucking thing in the universe. Like, why do I have to do this? So that was
Oh yeah,
pretty
that was
funny.
funny.
And best scene, well, definitely the audition when she's using sign language to communicate what she's singing, to kind of trying to express herself the best way she can to both groups. Like that was great. But scenes like that, I'm just thinking like, why wasn't more of the movie like this? It feels like it didn't quite earn those scenes for me. If it kind of just felt like a hodgepodge of great scenes that they, surrounded a basic film around. That kind of sums up
Yeah.
Coda in a nutshell, unfortunately for me. But I didn't hate it by any means. It's nowhere near as bad as Don't Look Up. I liked it more in Belfast. Um,
Belfast for
it's
me,
kind of
to
just
me,
middle of
I
the
just
road for
felt
me.
like the editing was so abrupt and quick. I just
It
didn't
felt
feel like
like
I
a
could
rough cut.
connect with anybody.
Yeah.
Everything just moves so quickly. The pacing is just so off for me.
Yeah, the
I
pacing's
wasn't
much
a
better
it
in
wasn't a
this.
horrible film, but I just felt like I just didn't have time to actually connect with anybody because everything just moves so fast. I
It,
would have been fine
yeah.
if it had just been 3 hours long and just gave me some breathing room to understand what was going on and who I should root for.
Hmm.
But anyway, that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
there's one thing I appreciate from the film, and it's the title. There's like multiple meanings to it. Like obviously it's child of a deaf adult, but also musically, the fact that the plot had something to do with music was tied into that as well. But also, if you look at
Yeah,
what coda actually means in music, it's like the concluding passage of like a movement, and you could say that this whole story was sort of her coda kind of being this close to the family or being just like the main translator for the family, like she's finally moving on in her life into the next movement of her life. So you
yeah.
could read into
So
it thematically like that, but I love how
yeah,
well realized that is of just a simple title kind of connecting different meanings together into one story. I love that.
yeah. I guess that figures into its Oscar narrative, its awards narrative as well.
Hmm.
When you put it in that perspective.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is exactly what the Oscars love, and this is the whole. I didn't know if Oscarbation was too crude of a title for this episode, but it also just seemed right,
It
you know.
fits. It works.
Um, uh, but I think there's other films that are less egregious about it than others. Like there are some movies that you can't just help but look at and think this was made to win an Oscar. Not that it deserves it, but it just feels a little more disingenuous in its goals. Like they weren't just trying to make this to make a film. They like, oh, they have Meryl Streep in this. They're of course they're going for an Oscar.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I think of
exactly.
just Osage County for example. Like that's a film
Oh no.
made for Oscar season.
I love that film, man. Because it's
Okay,
based on a play, and I love theater. It is based on a play,
true. Okay.
but
Play
you
is
know,
much better.
and the
I
performances are
guess
great.
the theatric when the theatrics are a little on the nose and it's coming out in like fall, I'm like, okay, we're gonna see a bunch of Oscar baity type movies now.
Hmm.
But I think this film stands out on its own. Like this is a film that I would watch not because it won Best Picture, but because I think it's a genuinely good story. And I like films like this that do that. Like I would show this with, I would have my parents watch this and see what they think of it and find and what ways do they connect with it.
All right.
So
What would you
I appreciated
guys
this one.
give it out of 10?
I give it a 9 out of 10, buddy.
Woo!
Nice.
Devin?
High praise. One of my
I'm gonna
favorites of
give it a
2021.
I'm gonna give it a 9 too. Fuck. Yeah,
Woo!
it's good.
I can't be that generous to it, but like I said, there are things I appreciate about it. It's not boring. I'll give it that. It's definitely not boring. It's almost 2 hours, and the film just flies right by, but not in the obnoxious way that Belfast was edited together, this actually feels like a full story. So I'll give it credit for that. It's a well acted, well orchestrated, well paced Disney Plus movie that I wish I could connect with more. And I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10, 3 stars.
It's not a Disney Plus, man. There's like sex and stuff in there, boss.
I,
Oh
It's
yeah.
like,
mostly Disney Plus.
Well,
okay.
this yeah, I think this could fit up with like the stars, like the
Yeah,
additional
stuff like
subscriptions
that.
within Disney that are a little more adult content. There's some stuff on there that I'm surprised Disney would have on there. But
Yeah. A lot of that stuff that they got from acquired from Fox and such. So yeah, and Hulu and all that stuff.
yeah, that
So
makes
it makes
sense.
sense. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, but there was another point I was going to mention, but it just completely shot out. Like how did not boring become a compliment? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, when I watched Belfast and Don't Look Up,
Okay.
I didn't find Don't Look Up in Belfast boring at
I
all.
Oh no,
found Don't
What
Look
is
Up
don't
up
kind
look
of
with that?
boring.
don't look up was anything but boring. I found.
I don't
I
know.
mean,
It's just
I
a
was
hot
I
mess.
was yeah
It's
no
a hot
it
mess.
is a hot mess. Man, I really wanted to hear Steven just shit all over that
Yeah,
movie because he
I want to talk
and
about it so bad.
I was teasing him saying I can't wait till Don't Look Up wins Best Picture and then just see Steven's reaction.
I don't think Adam McKay's made a great film since The Big Short.
Yeah,
That
Oh,
he's
The
that was
been
Big
the
trying The
Short.
strongest
Big
one.
Short
Vice
again,
is okay. Vice
and
is okay.
yeah, but the problem is he's been trying to recapture that magic, but he just failed to do so every time. Like he forgot how to make his own movie.
Well,
But this next director didn't forget how to make his own movies. Ryusuke Hamaguchi's Drive My Car. It's the first film I've seen from him. Spoiler
Good
alert.
job not butchering the name.
I'm surprised I got that right. I almost never get names right on here. So,
this is why I avoided introducing this one.
Drive My Car. It's about a renowned stage actor and director. He's basically the first 40 minutes of the movie are the prologue. It doesn't show the title of the movie until then, which is a very strange choice. And to be honest, I really wasn't with it for the first 30 or so minutes. But after that, I was like, all right, I'm right on board. Let's get
I
on
don't
with
think
it.
it shows the title until the very end. I mean, not to get into
It
spoilers, but I
no, it
think
shows the
it
title of
shows
the first
opening
40 minutes.
it shows opening credits after 40 minutes and then the title at the very end. That's what I remember
I
seeing.
thought it was both, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Anyways, main character is a renowned stage actor played by Hidetoshi Nishijima, and he's coming to terms with the loss of his wife, and he's coming to terms with the fact that an actor in his new play has cheated with his wife, and he's coming to terms with that. Just so much on his mind. And he can't even drive to take things off his mind like he used to because he got into an accident where his optics basically got messed up to the point where he cannot drive anymore. I don't
Well,
know if you need
I don't think that
glasses.
was the reason. I think it's because he sorry to correct here, but it's because he was as part of a contract for this artist residence thing
Mm.
that I think for liability reasons they have someone else
Yeah.
assign a driver to him.
Well,
So that was the reason.
well, the, they the reason they had that liability was because of his injury, though. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe they
basically
did.
his
maybe
Yeah.
that
injury.
was their way of bringing it in. Like maybe it was
Exactly. Like
because
you
of
could
his
drive, but we really
impairment.
don't want you to because we need you on this project. So it gives him this driver,
Okay.
and that side of it kind of seems a little bit cliche. But as they kind of open up about their issues, their relationship becomes way more interesting than you'd expect. And
Mm.
yeah, that's essentially what Drive My Car is about. It's kind of slow. It's very long. It's not for everybody, but man, this was my kind of movie. I really,
Oh, I loved it.
really dug this
I
movie,
I
and
was not
let's talk
expecting to
about it.
like it as much as I did. Like
Right?
I mean, I was a little nervous going in seeing the 3-hour runtime, and it's not that I'm against long movies, but there have been movies that we've covered on this podcast that just haven't earned their runtime.
Inland Empire.
Um, I no, I would disagree there, but no, this I love the sensibility of the way this story is told. Like it really. takes its time, but it feels earned. It doesn't feel like they're rushing anything. They really want you to develop these characters and connect with them in ways you don't normally expect. And it's a sensibility to filmmaking that I see in Japanese films that I've really come to appreciate over time. I remember seeing this one called Maboroshi, where it's about a woman going through this tragic loss and kind of grieving of, I think, her husband or something. And a lot of the film is just her kind of, I guess, very slowly coming to terms. It doesn't really come out of her until like the very end, how she's been feeling, like she's been kind of suppressing it. And I feel like there's an element to that in this film where he goes through. There was a lot of unresolved issues with their marriage, where you see that she's sleeping with other people, and he's not confronting her about it. Um, and then she dies kind of randomly as he's avoiding coming home. She has like a cerebral hemorrhage, so there's a lot of unresolved um, stuff that he's going through. And I love the way again, this is going into spoilers, but he's a play director and they're rehearsing lines. I love seeing this kind of creative process of them talking about stories, which made me feel a little more seen than usual because we discuss story ideas all the time,
Mm,
and I'm actually seeing this portrayed in a film, which was kind of it felt kind of meta in a sense, but
very.
it's almost like he's expressing things through other people's written words and other people's characters while not acknowledging what he's going through, um, which is really interesting and surreal to see just how they're expressing something while avoiding expressing something. I mean, it makes me think of has anyone seen In Cold Blood?
I've
Oh, I
heard of
still have
it,
not seen it as yet.
but it's
No.
on my
So
list.
there is one shot in that film that's very telling, and this is kind of the same idea but visual, where it's about these two characters that go and commit this awful crime, this awful murder, and this
Yeah, it's
person's
based
kind
on a
of
Truman Capote
Yep.
novel, right?
yeah, which is in turn based on real events. But
Hmm.
basically, through the cinematography, this guy is kind of avoiding facing some inner turmoil that he has. But the cinematography shows rain on the window and the light, and you see like the rain kind of tearing on his face, but he's not actually crying. But it's almost like the lighting is expressing what he's actually feeling on the inside when he's trying to act tough on the outside. And I feel like this film does that similar thing where these people are feeling some inner turmoil, but they're not outright expressing it. But he's just like rehearsing these lines of people going through these emotional episodes in a very robotic kind of way, which I think is super interesting. It just shows the complexity of human emotion and how multi-layered it is. Just like he's trying to avoid expressing something in and of himself by um, practicing something outside. I don't know where I'm going with that point, but I thought it was really interesting, and I love the
Yeah.
way they presented that.
It's meta, just like you said, but not in a way that's like really showy or explicit, like something like
Hmm.
New
It
Nightmare or
feels
In the
very
Mouth of Madness.
grounded.
Yeah, it's very
Feels very
grounded
real.
and subtly interwoven into the story. Like once a character goes through something and doesn't really react to it, not in a way that's stilted or awkward, but in a way that feels realistic. Like we wouldn't necessarily like encounter our wife if she's cheating on someone. We might go like, "Fuck this! Like I need to go out and for a breath of fresh air and express my emotions through music or through television or through another medium." And for him, it's practicing the play and the lines that are going through that part of the story. I can't remember the lines in particular, but it tied into that narrative. And I thought that was just a really, really great decision. Like it isn't just repeating the same lines and monologues over and over. There's a narrative purpose to that. Like the characters are expressing themselves through their art form, and that's essentially what the movie is about. Like it's how we art connects us and how we express ourselves through the art we delve into, and how it can kind of make us realize who we are. Like it's very a lot of movies, especially a lot of Oscar movies, try to go for the pro movie vibe or the pro story vibe, where it's like storytelling can really drive us together. But this movie is just much more subtle about it, much more grounded, and in that
Hmm.
approach, that it feels more personal. It doesn't feel like they're jacking off about how great they are, or how or how great their medium is. It just feels it's in it shows how art can be an expression and how art should be an expression of our emotions, but can help us confront our demons as well.
Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
I
That was
from
my
what I understand,
interpretation.
this is actually based on a short story from a
Hmm.
2014 collection called "The Man Without Women," if I remember clearly,
That's right.
which is really interesting. It's amazing how they could find a 3 hour story out of a short story. That's pretty impressive. I know for some people they may find this film a bit imposing on their time, but if you actually just block out everything around you and just sit for a moment, allow yourself to be absorbed both by the visuals and the performances and just the whole narrative purpose of this piece, you would actually find it quite engrossing. I was so taken by this film from beginning to the very end, and I didn't even notice that we had gone 40 minutes in without even an opening credit sequence because I was
Yeah,
just
like
so enraptured by just the dialogue and the way everything was framed and shot.
mhm.
The shadows and the light that just contours along the faces of the subjects. It was just so well made. And then when
It
you get to
was,
the
I think.
point of when the car is introduced and it gets on the road, I just followed that car straight through. It's just so bright red and just stood out among all the other but the whole environment
Yeah.
that the car finds itself through. That I just was so taken by every moment of this film. Every frame just spoke to me. So I didn't
Every
find it
frame of
imposing.
painting.
Yep, I didn't find it imposing at all. But I could understand how it doesn't work for some people
Hmm.
unless they have sort of that sort of visual language to understand the film as a whole. But
Hmm.
everything worked for me pretty well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
did
no, I
like it.
think I was only nervous about it looking at the runtime going in, but once we started, I love how it opens where it's just him having a conversation with his wife in bed and she's telling him story ideas. This is kind of a thing where he gets inspired with these story ideas right after they have sex, which is a kind of an interesting plot device and visual. Um, but no, I love how it throws you right in the middle of things, like in medias res, like it feels just immediate, and it gives you just enough of their backstory leading into the
Hmm.
main plot to really get you involved in these characters. And I
It's a
feel like there was
yeah.
no other way to do it because, the stretcher apparently was not is not fond of flashbacks. Like that's
That's
kind of a
that's good.
gimmicky.
Oh,
Good.
thank God.
It's kind of a gimmicky thing, and I
My
think him
boy.
just showing it in this straightforward linear way was probably the right way to do it. And I think it helps you feel a lot more engrossed in these characters. Like this could have been a little mini series on Netflix that some people watched, but others didn't. I think, and they really cut it down to as short as it needed to. Yeah, as short as it needed to be. And they said it. And he said he never intended to make a 3 hour long film. He tried to get it as short as possible, but they cut it down to the point where they felt like they couldn't cut out anything else. So I feel like they went in with the right intent in terms of the crafting the story. And he also said he wanted to conclude everyone's story in it. That's why this film feels like it has three, four endings. Like it could have ended right when they went to the girls' like sunken house after that whole story. Like it could have ended right there, but he wanted to wrap up give emotional little like buttons to each of the main characters we've been following, which I appreciated honestly, even though it could have ended sooner. But um, I like the sense of completeness that he puts into this film. It feels like a whole journey. Like this film feels like a visual novel. That's how I describe it. It doesn't feel like cinema. It feels like I'm seeing a novel kind of unfold, being played by real people. Just because the cinematography, the way it's captured, is just so clean and like it doesn't feel like there's any artifice in how it's captured. It's just shot with like an Arri Alexa with some Zeiss and Ingenue lenses, which are probably the cleanest looking lenses you can get your hands on, which some people almost avoid just because they find it too clinical. But I think the very human storytelling just
Grounds
gives
it.
it the maximum like resolution, the maximum sense of realism. Like I just feel completely engrossed in the story. I feel like I was transported to Japan and seeing these characters' lives in real time. That's how it felt. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, the
What
visual
Also,
aspect.
what you
Yeah.
describe is a clear demonstration of the filmmaker's artistic integrity.
mhm,
Because if had this been made in North America, specifically within Hollywood, they would have found every which way to cut around this whole film, and you wouldn't
Oh
find
yeah.
the completeness in everybody's storyline to the very end. I'm sure they would have found a way to cut around it, whereby you
Oh
kind of sideline certain characters and only focus mostly on the protagonist. And
Easily, like, if this
yeah,
was given
I'm
to,
sure that
like,
would have happened.
A24 or some other producer would have thought, "Can we cut this down to an hour and a half?" And I'm sure they would
Would
have
have
Yeah.
found a way
ended
to
like
do it, but it would be
Belfast.
less of a film, not just in, like, a superficial way, but I think it really would be. I feel like it needed this amount of time to really give a complete sense of the story, which I thought was, really well done,
Hmm.
and it really affects you in ways you don't expect. And just one more point, I was watching like a press conference that they did which was really funny to see just as they had translators going from a few different languages, and it was just funny to kind of see how that play out. It was also interesting. In the film itself, there was also a person that did sign language, so there's
Yep.
a theme between these three movies. But fuck, what's the point I'm getting to?
Who
Oh, the
should have
original
won? Yeah,
story.
sorry, go on.
The original story, um, had the car be yellow and they
Oh,
changed it to red. And I think it was for the reason that you were mentioning, Bernardo, so that it stands out on the highway in those highway shots. Like it literally just looks like the cinematographer is on some guy's balcony, some apartment, and they're probably talking on the driver on the radios to drive on this highway from this point to this point, and to capture that shot. And I can just imagine hanging out on there, and you need a car that will visually stand out of all the gray of the highway and all the other cars around it. And red is probably just the, easiest color to visually point out, which is probably why red is the most pulled over color also.
Stands out the most. And yeah, that's the thing that surprised me the most about this movie is how gorgeous like the visual presentation is. Like the editing is great, the cinematography, there's a lot of like great long shots and wide shots where every detail, not even just the cars, but the characters themselves and how they're, how they're dressed and how their hairstyles are put together. Like even if you see them from miles away, you could just pinpoint which characters are which, and that amount of visual cohesion, especially considering like how like busy and how big some of the sets and like outdoor scenery is really great achievement in of itself, and kind of helps isolate the characters as well, because it always, all these characters are dealing with personal issues, and it always feels like they're, kind of alone in this world. Even if they're in scenes together, there's just a sense of isolation that all these characters are kind of putting up with in almost every frame, outside of a few scenes, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit. And the
so
fact
you
that,
figure,
yeah, go on.
go ahead. So
The
you figure
Yeah,
even among all of that, that's the scale when you consider how massive the population is of Japan and all the grandeur of the architecture and all of the scope and scale of the city itself or the country itself, they still found a way to bring everything down to a smaller, more intimate sort of uh, setting whereby you can actually just be there in the moment with those characters and actually sort of hone in on them and what they're experiencing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and the journey that they're going on. Is that what you're trying
exactly.
to suggest?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure like lifestyle in Japan is a huge influence on the story and the characters. Like I'd imagine in such a populated city and such a huge city in particular, it's very easy to feel alone in the world. And this is stories like this are heavily influenced of trying to ground these normal people that just feel very miserable and depressed and lonely in their lives, coming across similar like-minded people. I'm sure like the influence of the setting had a huge influence on the story and great effect, I thought. But there's never, and on top of that though, there's never like that scene, that cheesy scene where it's like they blow up an emotion and they, start crying and yelling at each other. Even scenes where you think that's going to happen, they just pull away
Yeah.
from that at the right moment. And I
You mean
really
you mean the
appreciate,
Oscar clip, right?
yeah, the
The
Oscar
Oscar clip.
clip, which I felt Coda kind of felt like at certain scenes, but it never has that Oscar clip. It never goes that route, and I really, really appreciate the film for holding back in that regard.
Mhm. You gotta appreciate the clips of the Oscars kind of take from these films where they cut just before something dramatic happens. Like they want to put you in suspense and make you interested in this film you probably haven't seen,
But
which
it's
is a
what is
lot.
interesting though. Each year when I see a film, I already can extract the Oscar clip. Every film that I see within the year, I can already
Well, you're
extract
just used
what
to
the
it, yeah.
Oscar clip is going to be. Every
Oh
single time,
yeah.
without fail.
Yeah. Well, you've
But
seen
I
the
could I
Oscars so
couldn't do
many
it with this.
times.
I couldn't do it with this film though because it's just structured differently. It really isn't a North American film. There's a different sensibility in which the Asian filmmakers and some of our other filmmakers around the world approach the medium, it's so not the same
Hmm.
stylistic wise as the North Americans do.
And that's why it feels like such a fresh breath of air. I cannot
Breath
speak today.
fresh?
Freudian slip.
It, just dyslexia and fatigue and
I feel it,
early
Dave.
onset Alzheimer's. That's all it is.
Jesus.
But no, like this is such a refreshing film. I feel like I was really there, breathing in the atmosphere and experiencing what these characters are experiencing. And they really connect in some ways you don't expect, and I thought it was really touching. Like when he first meets his driver, it's kind of a very cold kind of first meeting.
Very
Like she's a
awkward.
young girl,
Yeah.
he's not sure he can trust her with his car because he has to drive him around. And he's saying that it's an old car, it's got these quirks that only I know about because it's like a really old car from like the 90s that he's kept very good care of. Which is why I thought this was like a period piece at first, because like the car seemed really old and it looks really new. I'm like, man, where do they dig out this like would be beat up sedan, but in like pristine condition? Like I thought this took place in the 90s at first when I like was first seeing it, but then he pulls out a cell phone. Um, Oh, he just really takes care of this car, I guess.
Yeah.
And then when first meets her, she's basically just acting like she's at work. Like there's something about people's body language when they're not really interested in meeting or socializing. They're just there for their job, and you could just get that from her mannerism. But they slowly open up to each other, and I really appreciated seeing that dynamic kind of play out, and where he has her drive to these places just so he can meditate and really reflect on what's he's about to do next. And he has her drive him to his or her village that she escaped from, and the kind of unfortunate relationship she had with her mother, who was going into these like bipolar split personality kind
Yeah.
of breakdown, and how she died in their house when uh, I guess it fell from like a flood. I forget exactly what happened, but then they
A
go back and
mudslide.
visit
You're right.
a mudslide. Yeah, like, and
Hmm.
she goes back and visits that home. Like that was such a great scene, just seeing them, connect. Um, where I'm like, God damn it, just hug each other. You both need it.
Yeah, there's. You
And then they
said.
did.
Yeah, go on. Coda. You said Coda was wholesome. I disagree. I think this film has some of the most wholesome scenes in cinema. Like the first time where
They're both wholesome, but I think this is even more so.
yeah, the first time the main character like genuinely compliments the driver at the dinner, and she's so uncomfortable that she's like, I gotta go play with this dog. I literally
Ah,
awed. Like that was so adorable. Like that was so cute. And I'm really glad a story like this isn't just all depression and misery. Like it does have a lot of levity to it through the cute scenes and for some like genuinely funny moments as well. Like the first time he's talking to his wife and he's like, does she masturbate? It's like, no, she has standards. It's like, wait, so it's okay to break into a house, but masturbating is too far? Well, yeah, and it
Hmm.
just goes away. Like, that was kind of funny.
It's
And I'm glad a film like this isn't as miserable as it could have been. It doesn't feel like torture porn. It also lets you know that
oh
these
no.
are characters with warm and embracing moments, and those moments feel more rewarding because of the overall tragic vibes of the story.
Yeah. Like this film could have easily had this like overtly pessimistic, cynical view of
cynical.
things,
Yeah.
and it just looks at things very matter of factly and allows people to be warm and to feel positively after not feeling great. And I appreciate that. I appreciate just how balanced it is, where it's not creating an impending sense of doom or misery. I mean, sometimes that's cool for a film, especially if you're feeling that way. You want to see a world invade in that sense, so you feel seen or whatever. But this film shows people going through something, but then eventually coming out of it and opening up again, and there's light and there's other people out there in the world to connect with, and I really appreciate that in this film. I mean,
Yeah, but I
man.
think sometimes that can only be accomplished when we actually kind of forced to confront the painful truths of our past.
Yes.
That
Exactly.
sometimes we need a catalyst that actually put us in that uncomfortable position to do that. And I guess his
Hmm.
wife's sudden death was that catalyst that actually helped him to go on his journey,
True.
uh, to
It's
actually confront those issues and find some resolution to them, you know?
it still took him like 2 3 years to do so, but I think meeting the right people and getting outside of himself and working on a project with other people and confronting those things helped. I think it helped
Even
him
even
connect in that
confronting
way.
your enemy and actually developing
Yes.
a strange
Yes.
sort of relationship with them, where they're sparring at times, but at the same time there's some kind of mutual respect and honor between the two of them.
Hmm.
That helps in bringing some kind of reconciliation to the trauma as well.
Yeah, that was my favorite scene in the movie. Just the scene of the two of them in the bar. Like you expect a typical relationship to be like really jealous, or one of them is one of them's a major asshole and the other one is like this wholesome sweet person that was in the right the whole time, but it's so much more complicated than that. And it's interesting to see these guys it kind of like secretly saying like I know what you did and I hate you
I,
for
I
it, but
was
also
I
having kind
was
of a
wondering
sense of
what his
mutual
beef was.
respect.
What was that the guy that slept with his
That was
wife
the
at the
guy who slept with
beginning?
his wife. Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
legitimately.
that makes a lot more sense. Okay, I don't know how I missed that. I'm
But
like,
at the same
what is
you,
his
time,
you,
problem
yeah.
you
with
know
him?
you know what's
And wait,
interesting?
how did he know that? And
Well,
like, okay, but
he walked in on
it makes sense now.
yeah.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? You probably never saw Ryan Murphy's limited series Feud, Betty and June. It's
Sounds
about
familiar.
Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, but their feud. And in the introduction, Catherine Zeta-Jones, who played Olivia de Havilland, she was being interviewed, and she said, feuds are not about hate; they're actually about love.
Mutual
That's
respect.
when two people have a mutual respect and understanding of each other, and one has something the other one wants. That's how you get a feud. It's not that they hate each other; it's just that they feel that they're deprived of something and they want something that the other one has. And then when I'm watching this film, I see that one person knows so much more about the wife of this lady than the
Hmm.
other does, and the other one had a relationship that the other one desired to have with the woman, because she's kind of split into two, right? It's like she's
Exactly.
living two lives. Probably
Hmm.
both of them wanted something different from this woman that the other one has, and that kind of developed a sort of tension between them that I found kind of interesting,
And I feel
because they
like he
both
was
interrogated
kind.
each other at
Yeah,
some point in the film
I
to
feel like
try
Yeah,
he
to
it's
was
like
kind of
understand each other.
tormenting
Yeah.
him as the story went on. Like he'd make him like was he genuinely critical of the scene he was playing with the other actress, or was he just pissed that he was late
yeah.
for the rehearsal and he's just letting out this anger that he's built up? Like, was it genuine, or was it just like built up anger he's had because of what he did to his wife? Like he clearly
But
wanted to say something to him after.
I also like how subtle that rivalry is. Like you
Hmm.
almost wouldn't notice it if you were on the outside. It's just because we know the history between them that you know that he's kind of maybe pushing him in this way because he feels a certain way. But it's not like a grand scheme of trying to ruin his life. It's just these subtle little, you know, comments or things that he says that shows he's irritated and he wants to confront him about this thing, but he's not sure how to. I love how subtle and realistic that is,
Hmm.
rather than, one guy plotting and scheming like, oh, you fucked my wife, so I'm gonna ruin your life and torment you, kind of thing, where it's like these very dramatic noir kind of plots. This just feels a lot more realistic in the little petty rivalry he has for a bit, but then when he tells him the story of what she said of how she concludes her story about the southern shooter coming in and such, just suddenly everything kind of coming out in the open. That was a very cathartic scene with them kind of just in the back of the car talking, which it's amazing how much like build up leads into that scene
Hmm.
having as much impact as it has, and it's literally just two people talking in the back of a car, but it just has so much impact in
And the writing is
terms
so
of,
powerful.
yeah.
Yeah. That's the one thing I really wish American cinema can get back to. Just staying on the characters. Just let the frame stay on the characters, and let's stay with them for a long moment.
Hmm.
Let's be absorbed by just the look in their eyes, the subtle nuances of their faces. Because right now I just see so much like quick editing and coverage in American films these days is kind of nauseating sometimes. But just
Yeah.
this film works so well. Those scenes were so well crafted, and
Mhm.
it just doesn't let you go, because I really feel like those characters were looking directly at us. They're letting
That
us
that
know.
that's
They're
Essentially.
letting us. They're letting us in.
Hmm.
yeah, that's what makes it feel more intimate and engaging. Is just them looking right down the barrel. We feel connected, and then even in those scenes, the director would set up the camera. Like when the actor was just alone with the car and the camera, they would still have the actor like next to the camera, so they still felt like that they were talking to each other, which I think really helps make the performance more authentic.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, I was just reading that on IMDb, and I'm
Oh.
gonna pretend that I read research that in advance. Um,
Well,
But no, I think that's a great technique. I think that's something that should be done more often is actually have the other actor that he's supposed to be talking with there, just off camera. If the shot is just the one on him, then it makes them feel like they're still talking to each other, and
But
that
once
should
again, we're talking about American cinema. We're talking about Hollywood. These guys don't like that kind of work. They want to go into that trailer and allow the stand-in to be there. This is the problem I have with the whole way Hollywood is structured, man. You know, all these union
yeah.
rules and all this other stuff that makes things so complicated, and you kind of lose things sometimes when in the creative process.
it also
Whereas
Yeah,
in
makes it
like
more
other markets,
frustrating for the
they just
filmmakers.
do things differently that
Yeah.
tend to work better.
Yeah, it's actors are driving the project, which can work in some projects, but with other projects, it's just a frustrating experience. Sometimes you just want to capture somebody in the moment, and that's getting harder and harder and harder to do with a Hollywood production. And it depends on the actor, of course. Some
Yeah,
big
of
name
course.
actors are still very old fashioned in that sense, but it is.
It depends
You're
on the
right, there
actor,
is
and
more of a
depends, and also depends
disconnect.
on the
Yeah,
director and the
exactly.
respect that the actor has for the director. All that kind of politics sometimes. It depends.
Yeah,
it's also
exactly.
funny. It's also funny that this film is basically 2 hours, 59 minutes, 4 seconds, exactly, and it's based off of a story that's 40 pages. Um,
With a 40
but
minute prologue.
it's yeah, but I think it works. It works
Yeah,
surprisingly well,
I was just so
and it gives
absorbent.
you yeah,
I
and really you don't feel that time once you're in it. Once you're in a place where you can, you know, just be there and be comfortable watching the film, you don't feel the time run at all. It feels like just a natural
Mhm.
progression of the story. Like I paused maybe once during this film
Yeah.
because I was pulled away, but that was it. Like I was absorbed in it. I wanted to finish it in one sitting. I didn't feel pulled away or distracted by anything. Like there's some films I watch some of these weeks, and I end up coming back to it so many times because I get distracted by something because I feel like I'm seeing a type of story that I've seen 100 times before, where this felt completely fresh to me, or something I haven't seen in a while. And this is the type of filmmaking I really love and can get engaged in. So
Yeah.
kudos to it.
Yeah,
Um.
I'm often kind of criticized by some of my peers for being the one that likes films that are sometimes too slow and ponderous.
Fuck 'em.
You know, 'cause I'm a huge Denis Villeneuve fan, and people think sometimes
We.
that he can be a little slow and ponderous, even within the sci-fi genre,
Oh
which I
yeah.
guess some people are kind of used to things being cut up very quickly, right? That's
Hmm.
just the microwave generation we're living in now.
The
Instant
microwave
gratification,
generation. I love that.
instant
That's a
gratification,
great quote.
quick, everything, information just thrown at you quickly, consume it, digest it quickly, and get the hell out of there. But sometimes, like I said, I just want the frame to be held still on the subjects and on the environment as well, so I can be transported into whatever setting or whatever experience that the filmmaker wants me to have. And I think
Yeah.
people like what's this filmmaker's name again? You gotta pronounce it for
Oh,
me.
sorry. It is
Uh,
Ryusuke
Ryusuke Hamaguchi.
Yeah, that
Ryusuke
guy.
Hamaguchi.
Yeah, that guy and people like Denis Villeneuve, I think they tend to accomplish that, which is why I'm huge
Hmm.
fans of that style of filmmaking and
I'm
that
with
way
you.
of storytelling.
Baraka, my favorite
This is a
film, was
film that
very much like
really,
that.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
a film that really earned its runtime. I'm gonna eat my words because I was saying how I would normally love slow, ponderous films like this when they earn their runtime, but there are some films that kind of test that. And especially when we do a podcast where we cover 3 films a week, I started
Oh, okay,
appreciating shorter runtime films.
okay.
But this film is certainly an exception, I think. This is the type of long form filmmaking I enjoy where that runtime feels earned. Um, there are
So
other films that could definitely deal with less time.
Hmm.
so I guess we all feel good about this one.
Yeah, for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
There's a couple of things I wanted to mention first. Like I said, I wasn't with it the first 30 minutes. It felt like the kind of film I thought it would be. It was like, all right, I really have to watch this guy drive to the hotel, get a call that the hotel isn't going, and drive back, and walk out the house, drive some more. But after that 30 minutes, I realized like it's going for the sound of metal effect, where it's getting us comfortable with a certain atmosphere and a certain routine, and it takes it away from us. Like we get used to this calm stillness and intentional loneliness of his driving that's kind of stripped away, and it's very intentional. That's kind of a slow build up, but it works for the film. I wouldn't want it any other way, but I could see some people maybe being turned off by it, like, okay, really, like this is all the film is going to be. that's not all the film is going to be. Stick with it for sure. And secondly, we got to talk about the ending where the main character turns into a dog. How would you guys interpret the ending of the movie?
Oh yeah, so I guess it cuts to the girl. I guess she owns the car now, and this is during the pandemic. Everyone's wearing masks now, which really felt real.
Hmm.
Um, seeing everybody in a grocery store wearing N95s, I guess. And then yeah, did he give her his car? That's what I'm wondering. It
Yeah,
felt like
I some people thought she just bought a similar car in honor of him and just bought the dog in honor of the family with the deaf wife and the father that helped them get the play, but that's how I interpreted it as is that he respected her enough that he passed away maybe potentially because of his issues with his optics or perhaps the same disease that his wife had and he just gave away his car in honor of her and their relationship together, which is how I interpreted it. But the film
uh,
doesn't explicitly say that, which I really appreciate because that's kind of the point of the story is that the past doesn't really matter. All you need to do is take the best parts of the past, take it with you, and just move on with your life. And she even gets surgery to replace the scar on her cheek, which kind of shows that she's moved past that trauma as well. Is how I interpreted
Yeah,
it.
I'm assuming that he actually gifted the card to her and shedded that whole part of his past, and just moved on past it.
Hmm.
So he just allowed her to have the card, so
Enjoy
he
my
can just
trauma.
move on. Yeah, drive my
drive
trauma.
Enjoy
drive my
my
that
generational trauma.
that's a great that's a great alternative title for this movie.
Yeah,
Damn.
drive my generational trauma. Did we have any complaints with it? Because mine are very minor.
Okay, go.
I
You
really
list your
don't.
complaints.
Well, again, they're so tiny and minuscule. Basically, just some weird ADR now and again. Like characters sounded. It does that thing
In
where it's
which
like they're
moments?
so particularly like when they're out in the open or when they're in the parking lot talking to each other for the first time, like sometimes it sounds like the character is right next to you, even though they're like miles away, and it
Mm.
doesn't really have an echo effect. Like it's that weird effect that kind of distracts me a little bit, but yeah, that's
Like
pretty
you can
much it.
tell that they were re-recording the lines in a studio because they
E-
probably wanted to filter out all the city sounds from the dialogue,
exactly,
which
and it's a
yeah,
little obvious at
that's
times.
and those are just practical things. Like,
Hmm.
the sound guy does his best pointing the boom mic to where the actors are, or they're wearing little lavaliers. But when you're editing the thing after the fact, you really want to have a clean cut of dialogue and then be able to mix that in separately with cityscape sounds. So yeah, but the trick is recording them in the studio in a way that matches the scene, um, and gives you full control of the mix. But
Yeah, just
honestly, I was so engrossed in the story, I didn't even notice those, and
yeah,
that's
Yeah,
really
I
the
didn't
job of
notice
it's
the
any of
sound
that
mixer.
so
stuff.
minor, just minor like technical issues like that.
Hmm.
And like I said, the first 30 minutes are slow to get through at first, but in retrospect, I wouldn't want the
Yeah,
film to be any other way. So I can't really complain about that too much. But my advice to you is just stick with it. It's worth it.
No, it's
definitely.
funny. The one of the films in contention this year in the international category was The Hand of God, Italian film, which
Mm.
is available on Netflix. That's the same feeling. That's the same sort of experience I had with that film. In the first 20 minutes, it almost lost me, but for somehow, some way, some reason, it sort of transitioned from the kind of you know fast-paced sort of confusion of the first 20 minutes. At least it's confusing for me because the rhythm of and timing of everything and the action was going so fast. But after the first 20 minutes, it kind of slowed down. I actually was able to, get involved and with the characters and with the story. And yeah, that's the kind of experience I had with that film. But interesting enough, I didn't have the same experience with this. I found
Fair
myself
enough.
engrossed from the beginning.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's
But
interesting. And I wanted to ask you, Bernard, just because you literally went out of your way to watch every single nominated film and would have an informed opinion on this. So, we're talking about the three big winning films: Best Picture,
Yeah,
Best Foreign
Coda
Picture,
winning
Best
Best
Animated.
Picture.
Yep.
Yeah,
Are there
and
any films that didn't really win much, or maybe weren't nominated in the first place? Or are there any ones that you think really missed their chance in the spotlight, or
big
that
snubs.
should have been highlighted more?
You mean that was on the ballot or throughout the whole season?
Uh, well, any that just stick out in your mind. Are there any ones that didn't get as much attention as they deserved?
Oh, okay. The thing is, when it comes to award season, usually at the end of it, I try to like move on, but
Okay.
unfortunately, the slap heard around the world won't allow me to. So,
Oh,
No, we
damn.
almost
so
dodged it.
yes.
Ian, what's our timestamp
Uh,
right now?
the timestamp
How,
is oh I'd say it doesn't say on here unfortunately, but it's about an hour and 11 minutes in.
an hour and 11 minutes before we mentioned the slap. That's not
So
bad.
That's a good record.
interestingly enough, all season, everybody, no one was talking about licorice pizza seriously. Everyone was so
Yeah,
narrowly. Well, at the beginning of in the fall, Belfast came out the gate hot out of the gate, right? That was on everybody's tongue. That was in the conversation. Then all of a sudden, there was a lot of heat behind Dune, and then
Yeah.
that started to fizzle out a little bit. Nightmare Alley came about, but no one really took it that seriously. I guess people were just looking at it more so from the sort of more craft side of it, right? It was a
mm,
good story, but I think most of the focus was on the craft. It did achieve everything that filmmaking can achieve, so I guess that's why it's mentioned in the best picture category. But then everything went behind Power of the Dog, and then in the last month, the conversation completely switched over to Coda. But yeah, Licorice Pizza is one that I didn't get much love during the season. No one really talked about it that
No.
much.
Which
It
is
got a few
crazy because
mentions here and there, but no one talked about it.
we were considering covering that for this episode just because Steven was totally gung ho about it, and I know Steven loves the film. There's another guy on our server who really hates it, which is really interesting to me, and I'm really
bring them
curious to
both
see where
together.
I'll land. But we'll we'll
My
definitely
roommates
talk
hated
about
licorice
that at
pizza.
some point. They did, eh?
But
Interesting.
one film that I thought was really great, I loved was Flea. Flea is the international. It got
Yeah,
nominated for international feature as well. It's a completely
got nominated for best
animated
animated film too.
documentary, which is pretty
Okay,
interesting. So it was nominated in the animated feature film category, the international feature film category, and the documentary film category. So
that's
that's a
interesting.
film I thought was quite compelling. I really did love that film. I just love the
I
approach, and I
It's
did
really
love the
good.
story.
there aren't
It's
a
quite
lot of
impactful, actually.
like there aren't a lot of animated documentaries. Like one that I can think of that was I think did win an Oscar was on the ballot like many years ago. I remember us talking about it in like Canadian film class. Was a little short film called Ryan, which was Chris Landreth interviewing this animator hero of his who has since kind of become this really broken shell of a man and who has this like emotional outbreak. It's like a dialogue only recording interview that he did with him, but then he went and took that audio and animated it and showed him in this very abstract sense where he still resembles this person that he was, but clearly trauma and drinking and other things have been eating at him. So like his body is physically deformed in this animation,
Wow.
just showing what his personality is like, which I think is such an interesting way. So I love this very niche type of way of storytelling where you take real audio or a real interview or a real story and then you animate it to express another side of that reality that isn't just the physical reality of the thing. It kind of represents a different side of it. So yeah, I haven't seen Flea, but I am very interested just based on how you described it.
Well,
It's a
you know
great
where to
movie.
find it. Every season since
Yes.
last year, I set up these Google Drives where I invite people to access films that I would have downloaded. So you know where to
All
find it.
legally acquired, by the
All
way.
yep, all legally
Why you gotta bring
acquired. So
attention? Why you gotta bring
please do
attention
not
to
bring
me,
us down.
dog?
You're
Don't
the
wait
one
for
that
it.
brought it up. You're
Ratings.
the one that brought
Drive
it
My
up.
Car ratings. That's what we're talking about now. Final
Yep.
thoughts on Drive My Car. What'd you guys give it out of 10 and not discuss illegally obtained copies?
Uh,
I
th- uh,
said I said legal. I said legal.
Oh, legally. Yes, right. Legally. Yes, that is the word.
Yes.
Wink,
There's
wink.
no ill. There's no ill. There's no ish here. Um, wink, wink, nudge,
anyway.
nudge. Uh, Man, I didn't give much headroom for Coda after giving it a 9. I was just wanting to sound cool. I was gonna give it an 8 originally. Fuck, I'm gonna give this one a 10. I thought it was solid.
Woo! What about you,
That's
Bernard?
lovely. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I found it to be a rich, patiently engrossing drama. It speaks to me because I think all of us can actually go on a journey towards self acceptance of our traumatic histories and things that we still have yet to resolve. Um, things that we regret that we still have yet to address. So it works for me in every which way. And of course, as an artist and someone with theater experience, I love the nods to theater. If I remember clearly, they were covering they were putting on a production of a Chekhov piece, Uncle Vanya,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with Chekhov, so that's nice to throw that in there. And the way they did it was having it done in multiple languages and had multiple interpreters and things like that. Yeah. So performance is great, production great. Um, the style of editing was nice. You know, cinematography great. Uh, yeah, I'll just go up above Coda with a 9.2 because
Hmm,
I don't think I'll ever give anything 100, 10 out of 10.
fair.
So I'll just go at
Fair.
9.2.
Sounds good. And I'm
That's a
giving this
perfectly
one
measured response.
a 9.5 out of 10. I think this or
Nice.
Dune should have won Best Picture, and the fact that this
True.
lost adapted screenplay to Coda, in my opinion, is laughable because the writing of this movie just reminds me that I'll never write anything nearly that good in my entire life. The writing is just next level for
You
me.
know what? I'm gonna bump my score down just a notch to
Oh,
9.6,
Oh,
just so we
yeah.
have just so we have the inverse of a 6.9 in this episode.
all
Oh,
right,
good one.
Yeah.
okay.
But
Uh,
it also gives it a little bit of headroom.
well, I think I
Like
know what you're rating the next film then.
maybe if it had an explosion, then there'd be a total 10.
Speaking of which, Encanto, Devin, what is this
Encanto.
movie about?
Uh, so as per Disney's under the table contract to have at least one picture winner each year, we have Encanto,
Eh,
which is the story of the Madrigals,
The
who are
Magicals.
a very talented family in Mexico, um, who live. Oh no, sorry, not Mexico, Colombia. This really shows how ignorant I am.
Hashtag
Um,
racist.
God damn it, my bad.
Cancel him,
I think
everybody.
I confused that with another recent film of theirs. I don't know.
No,
Not
that's
Luca. Luca's Italian. Um,
Coco.
so yeah, they live out in the mountains. Coco, that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
same movie, right?
Coco and Canto. There's similar cadences there. Okay, so yeah, it's a family that live up in the mountains of Colombia, and every member that's born in this family have magical mystical powers that are all different. And by a certain when they come up to a certain age, that's when it's kind of revealed what their power is. Except for Mirabelle, who seems to be the odd one out of the group. She doesn't seem to have any particular special powers. Um, which was a point of concern that everyone has tried to talk around very carefully. Um, and she's kind of wondering what her role in the family unit is. Um, but she discovers some hidden secrets that have been swept under the rug also over time. Like the one guy is that needs not to be mentioned, in
But
that
will be
song
Never
that's
to be
being
Sunbow.
played
mentioned.
over and over that needs not to be mentioned, just like the slap that needs not to be mentioned. We
Good
don't talk
segue.
about Jada. Sorry, Bruno. Um, it's a Disney movie. What do you expect?
I know. I'm sorry. Go on. Yeah.
So yeah, I remember I watched this not long after it came out because it was family movie night, and we have to see something that we all agree with, which is a very narrow gap these days. Disney tends to fit the bill. We also saw Turning Red recently, which did not get nominated for anything, probably because it came out a bit late, but also
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
it can be considered for the next award
It'll be
cycle.
good served for the next
oh
awards.
we'll see how well it holds up by then.
Yeah.
Spider Verse will be nominated instead of it, and I'll be happy.
Oh boy, can't wait.
Can't wait. But Encanto, I think this film is. I love and hate this film in equal measures. Is the
Ooh,
best way to
Oh.
sum it up. It is a beautiful mess with lots of ideas that work and lots of ideas that don't work, with lots of songs that don't work and few songs that are great. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's a mess. It's so hit and miss, but I'll take a beautiful, sprawling mess over a bland, generic Disney film like, Raya and the Last Dragon or Luca any day. A film like this
hmm.
isn't great,
Yeah,
but it has
I'm just
personality to it.
sorry.
Go on.
I'm just trying to make the distinction. I know this one was Disney Animation. Ryan the Last Dragon was Disney Animation.
Yep,
I think Luca was Pixar.
it
I don't
was
know if there's a
Pixar,
clear
but
distinction between the two, but it seems like I don't know it seems like their approaches are
well,
very similar,
yeah, Pixar is
regardless
owned by
of.
Disney now. Is the thing, and you
I,
can
I know it's
tell.
owned by Disney, but I would think that if you have Disney Animation making projects, and then Pixar making projects, that they have their unique identity or approaches to the medium, but they all
It,
like the
Kind of
same thing.
blend
there's
If
really
you
together.
a
ask me.
lot of overlap. Like there's a Venn diagram here, and there's a lot of most of the stuff is probably in the middle. I think like Disney would outsource to Pixar for all their 3D stuff back in the day, and then eventually Disney developed, I guess, enough of its own infrastructure to do their own thing. But they still haven't completely cut Pixar out of the picture. They're still kind of like I mean, I don't know how you'd equate it to maybe like an open marriage or something. Um, but yeah, eventually they work together on projects, and they're really hard to distinguish. I couldn't tell you what's a Disney only production and what's a Pixar Disney co-production. I don't think Pixar does anything without Disney anyway.
Not
Um,
anymore. I think they were mostly isolated beforehand, but I think around Coco, if I'm not mistaken, because The Good Dinosaur was such a flop and they needed more money. I don't know if it was Inside Out or Coco, but they basically merged with Disney at that point. They weren't really an indie studio anymore. Nothing they could do could be done without Disney say so. And I think they could get away with a little bit more in their earlier pictures, and you could definitely tell that they could get away with more than they do now.
anyway,
I
convoluted
I know
infrastructure aside.
Yeah, I know Ian said that he found this to be a bit of a mess, but you know that's how I feel about Lin Manuel Miranda's work all the time though. I did
Oh,
enjoy Hamilton in a lot of ways. A lot of things in that show worked. Some of the songs can be a little much, like you know some things just don't work all the time. I saw In the Heights as well, the at least the movie adaptation version. Some songs are great, some songs didn't work, some just kind of yeah, you know,
Mm-hmm.
messy. So I just think that's just him, right? It just so it's such a
I
there's
think he
so much
just has
stuff
too much
going
on
on
his
in his
plate.
work that
Like,
so you just can't hit all the right notes
mm,
straight throughout
yeah,
the whole
which is
production, you know?
it's funny because he's all about the music. I mean, you think hitting the right notes would be like
Forte.
his forte. Ah, but
Oh, speaking of
he
it, did you guys see Tick Tick Boom then?
I
Just for
was
another
just about to
comparison.
mention, what did you think of Tic Tac Boom? Because I
I
saw it
haven't
and I
seen it.
actually really liked it, and I didn't
Yeah,
realize that was his directorial debut.
debut. Yeah, yeah. I did like that one a lot actually. I thought a lot of that worked pretty well. You know,
Hmm.
maybe because there's a subject that you know I guess based on an actual person. Maybe he had something to reference that wasn't only
Yeah.
his original thoughts, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because it gives you some context behind how Rent was made, and it makes you think, maybe Rent was complete shit. Well,
Yeah,
no,
it's a great play, but not a great adaptation by any means.
I mean,
well, I think
the
Chris
movie adaptation.
I think Chris
Yeah,
Columbus did the movie adaptation. I remember seeing it once back in the day. I haven't seen it since, so I can't really
you're not
say, but
missing
I know
much.
a lot of people love it and a lot more people don't love it. And I'm curious how it holds up because I think seeing the story of that character and how he came to write that story eventually and the ones he written prior to that is really interesting.
Mhm.
And it just shows kind of the struggles of a starving artist, which has nothing to do with the canto.
Yeah, speaking of Encanto, let's talk about the music in Encanto and how hit and miss it is, as we discussed before. And I don't know about you guys. I noticed there was some pretty bad auto tuning at certain parts of the song, and it was like
Oh.
particularly obnoxious. And what was the song of I keep forgetting the characters' names and don't want to be racist about it, but the girl that has the power to turn has the whole song about plants and growing flowers and how she kind of wants to
Oh,
Oh,
express herself for her gardening instead of her
uh,
looks. Like I thought the auto tuning in that song was really bad. Like it felt like
the
a
I don't
was
straight to
it
remember
YouTube
that it's
song.
I don't remember the
beautiful and
exact
it's
music
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
beautifully
been a while since
shot.
I've seen it.
It's got a great
this is
But
when she
message, but
this is the song where she's expressing making beautiful messes or something like that.
yeah, and
She wasn't concerned more about making things too pretty. She didn't mind making things that were imperfect. And that's you
I
talking that
mean,
song that was in that scene?
yeah, I felt like the auto tuning in that song was so bad. Like they sound like robots for the entire song, and I noticed there was a lot of that in this movie. I realize a lot of musicals, especially nowadays, probably use auto-tune to an extent, but for some
I'll let
reason,
you in
maybe
on a little
it was
production secret. A lot
so.
of pop records use autotune on just about everything on very low settings, just so the performance comes out technically perfect. But
Yeah,
they would normally not dial it up to such obvious extents unless they were using it creatively,
Right.
often to
Because
try to
apparently,
make
yeah, yeah.
worst case scenario, they have a person who doesn't sing normally, who maybe usually raps, and they crank up the autotune to make them somewhat sound like they're in key with the song.
Right.
and that's
But
what this
Which,
music feels like.
usually for regular singers and performers, they use pitch correction, which
true,
smooths
that's a
out
subtle
the little
difference.
imperfections here and there. You know,
Yeah,
but there is a lot of autotune nowadays because they've turned rappers into singers,
yeah.
which is actually the
Yeah,
truth. So
I wish they had a plugin that could make mumble rappers articulate.
yeah,
yeah, well,
exactly. Just
that's
translate.
a genre of its own. But back to
Yeah,
Encanto, yeah. There's certain numbers that I really did like.
That's
I
true.
must say I am in that camp that loved. We don't talk about Bruno.
Yes,
Hate me or love me.
best
I did
song
like that
in the
number
movie.
a lot.
I actually like Bruno's character quite a bit
Yeah,
in this.
he
Johnny
was fun.
Zamo played that part,
I'm like,
right? If
cool.
I'm not
I
recalling.
live in the walls in our family mansion too. I feel so connected with this character.
He's literally me.
Yeah.
And I kind of like how they handle this character too. Like they all made him out to be some demon, and it's like rats across his back. Like they're just talking to him like he's the boogeyman. But that's only because they don't like what he has to offer. But all he does is tell the
Mm.
future. He's not predicting these horrible events just to spite his family, but because the family can't accept the truth, they kind of project him to be this bad guy. And I really liked that. And despite how awful the auto tune in the song I just mentioned was, and the Tough Girl song. I do like the messages behind those songs quite a bit. It's just they're lost in arguably awful songs compared to some of the better songs in the movie, like Les Madrigal or the opening number, or we don't talk
The
about
song about
Bruno.
the caterpillars. What about some of the caterpillars?
I
The
wasn't a
ones
fan of that
nominated.
one either.
Oh, I love that song. I love ballads.
I have a funny parallel to draw just really quickly, but it's funny how Bruno and Paul Atreides have the same superpower, but they're treated completely differently for it. But then
I didn't
again,
even
Dune
realize
Part
that.
2 hasn't happened yet, so no one knows where that story's going yet that
Oh,
hasn't read the
spoiler
book.
alert!
But
I haven't read the second part of the book. God damn it!
yeah,
All
well,
right, good to know.
there's more to it than that. I'll just say that much. But
uh, I'm excited to see where that goes.
it's hinted that he is able to kind of see possible futures because of spice,
Well, I knew that
or
much.
maybe not. Who knows? Um,
Hmm.
I'm actually really happy Dune won as much as it did. I think it got like 4 Oscars or 5
Five.
Oscars total.
Six. It
Oh,
Heck,
it made
man,
history in that it's the first film to win six Oscars without a director being nominated.
ah man, that's
damn.
such an ego. That must be such an ego blow for Denny, which might be exactly what he needs to do part 2 correctly.
Do
So
it.
I'm actually happy for that. That it won for all the technical stuff. It has enough validation there, but
Yeah,
he still gets to be humble going
I
into part
suspect,
2.
I suspect it could be getting the LOTR treatment, right? Where they nominated all the previous films for Best Picture and all that stuff, but then they wait until the third installment to give it everything that it deserved.
I think it's only gonna
Maybe
be two parts
they may
though.
be treating Lord of the Rings the same way. I mean, they may be treating
Dune.
Dune the same way as they treated Lord of the Rings. Who
Most
knows?
likely.
Oh
Fingers
yeah.
crossed. And back to Encanto real quick. Something I did appreciate was the animation, and it looks beautiful. Not in the way that most Disney films look now, where they're going for a realistic vibe, but they just look so bland and kind of flat, and the colors are kind of dull. Like it looks like it'll age very poorly in a few years, but a film like this will age very nicely because yes, it's going for a realistic animation vibe, but there's also tons of vibrant colors, lots of clever scene transitions. I love how they utilize the powers and musical numbers. Like there's a really fun energy to the presentation of the musical numbers, even if I don't like all of the music. The presentation is like I'm glad they tried to make it pop and have a personality instead of just going the Ray and the Last Dragon route where it's like, look at all how realistic we can make their faces and make the water look. It's like, no, just portray a creative vision that you couldn't portray in a live action film. Like that's what animation is all about. And I'm
I
kind of
think they
happy that
definitely do
Kanto
that here
aimed for
with
that. Yeah.
with each of these characters that have these special powers, which is a metaphor for everyone being born with their own quirks, and whether or not that fits into your family lineage, and kind of the expectations you have growing up. And it's kind of an interesting twist how she's meant to be the next martyr, I mean matriarch of the family, and it's interesting, this metaphor of like family kind of heritage and trauma and generational kind of inheritance and hereditary kind of traits moving ahead, but expressed in this kind of mystical way. Um,
It's the
I
Spanish
forgot the point I was
X-Men.
going with that.
Sorry, it's the
Oh yeah,
Colombian X-Men. No, I did it too. God damn it.
ha ha,
Get
you're
him.
ignorant too.
Yep, an hour and 30 minutes in. Get him. Timestamp it. Clip it on Twitch.
Yeah,
God fucking damn it. I was trying to
yeah.
avoid that. So yeah, the Colombian X-Men was pretty good. There were some ideas I liked, some ideas I really didn't. I think my biggest issue is the protagonist is ironically so bland. Like I don't even really know what her character arc was per se. Like I guess it was like trying to accept herself for who she was, but the film kind of has a problem where the side characters are really interesting and well expressed, but because they're so well expressed, they kind of forgot to have a protagonist. Like it it's funny how the film is basically about just accept who you are and be who you want to be without letting your gifts define you, but with the blandest most poorly written insert protagonist. Like it reminded me a lot of Logan and X-Men Days of Future Past, where he's just kind of there to advance the plot and find certain people and bring them together. They serve a narrative purpose, but they don't really serve a developmental purpose. I think that's my biggest issue with Encanto for
Mm.
sure. And the irony of that is that the message is going for something completely different, but the writers don't realize that's exactly what they did to the protagonist.
I guess that's why oftentimes I find myself drawn to supporting characters more so in films as
Yeah,
opposed to the lead character. I usually find supporting characters much more interesting and compelling.
Definitely.
They provide the fodder for you know the protagonist to accomplish their goals and or even try to provide the obstruction, the hindrance to protagonists accomplishing their goals. So I
that's
always find those ones much more interesting to watch as
mm-hmm.
opposed to lead sometimes, unless probably it's Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood. That's a performance character that's multi-layered and very interesting and compelling to watch.
Mm-hmm.
As
I
for
just
Encanto,
I just read
I
something really
go ahead.
interesting here.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Bruno was originally in the script named Oscar,
Oh
Why
but
was
no.
his
that
name was
changed?
changed to better fit the song lyrics. Additionally, there was a legal snag over a number of real-life Oscar madrigals that led to filmmakers to change it. Also, I imagine that would have made the performance of that song at the Oscars more awkward.
We don't talk
And
about Oscar. Yeah, well, we don't talk about
Mm,
Oscars.
it doesn't sing as well though. It doesn't sing as well.
No,
no, it doesn't. Yeah, that's why it was changed to Brew. No, 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 no. I mean, you
yeah,
can kind of
it
go
fits.
and yeah. I mean, I guess it's hard to make your Oscars sound lyrical, which is yeah. I don't think that would have played well at the Oscars because the Oscars want people to be talking about it, which is leads feeds into the conspiracies that that whole event was staged. Other
Yeah,
than the fact it was
as for
literally
me,
on his stage, I don't believe it. Go ahead.
I found Kanto pretty good. I did love the animation style. I
Hmm.
loved the way the characters were uh put together in terms of the way they were rendered and the way they're designed.
Hmm.
Uh, the musical numbers, like I said, some of them were hit or miss, but overall, most of the songs and most of the music was good. The score was pretty strong. The sequences are very well designed, especially the more fantastical musical numbers. Those are well designed.
Oh, great.
Um,
Fantastical.
Oh, they also, real quick, I wanted to mention they did real choreography for it. They recorded people dancing and incorporated that into the animation. I thought
oh,
that was kind of
wow,
cool.
that's good to know.
Yeah, like the whole singing about growing to plant sequence. Like it's just the actress on a swing, while the other like actress is kind of like dancing while on wires. Like it's kind of funny. You should definitely look up the behind the scenes for Encanto.
Mm,
Yeah, and
can't
and I
wait to
and I
see
and
that.
I do appreciate the fact that they do show the various type of Colombian faces that exist, because oftentimes we're used to seeing one sort of looking Latin or Hispanic person on screen often, but there are Afro Latinos in Colombia, more darker skin and various hair textures and things like that. And those ones that are more indigenous looking, and those ones that are more European Spanish looking. So to seeing those various faces in animation for children to see is I appreciate that a lot. Uh, but
Yeah,
it's I feel like it's a
it's
very
nice
well made
seeing
film.
a mix of different type of people in one kind of culture, which I think these films for, I think films like this highlight with, this looking into Colombia and showing all the various types of people that exist there, and looking at Drive My Car, you see a variety of different people in that film,
Mhm.
in their own culture. And I like seeing that, just seeing the
Yeah.
variety of things,
It
because some
also
people
adds
will look
variety
at
to
a,
the characters. Like you can shake
yeah,
up like the characters and help their personalities stand out more that way.
Yeah, some of
exactly.
the comedic timing was pretty good in this film as well
Yeah.
as most of the Disney Pixar stuff. Like
It,
they do
it
well with
is.
comedy. I think
Yeah,
some of
like the
a lot of the comedy
faces.
worked well.
Yeah, the faces that the main character makes, I thought were kind of funny. Like when she's eating the food and it heals her hand, she's just like, "Ugh, are you kidding me?" It's like you
Hmm.
just healed my hand with a Coda Paso, I think it's called. And it's like I healed it with my love, and their face is just like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like this is stupid. Like I thought details like that were kind of funny, but I thought the comedy was kind of got in the way of the drama of certain scenes. Like it kind of has that Marvel problem where it's not totally
Yeah,
consistent all the time. Like there's one scene in particular where she's speaking with her father, and the girl does her whoo to like interrupt the scene, and it's like that's not funny. Like I was trying to get myself in the drama of the scene, and that's not funny. Like it just took away from what I was delving into. It's the same complaint that people had about Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is my only issue with that movie, where the it's this really serious subject matter, but every now and again it's like, oh, gargoyles juggling balls and some silly slapstick. It's like that doesn't really fit the overall vibe of the movie, but all right. It's not quite to that extent, but Encanto felt like that at times. And I wanted to mention, how do you guys feel about the whole Grandma's major spoiler alert, like redemption arc? Because I thought that aspect was so rushed and so cliche, and it was kind of like the low point of the movie for me.
I mean, yeah, I barely really registered it, or at least I don't recall it well, but I remember like that initial twist was pretty huge, but then the way it resolved definitely felt like, let's just put a nice bow on everything
Yeah,
and
let's
make
wrap this up
everything,
really fast, essentially.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's such a cliche for a character to have like a traumatic backstory and have that be the reason for why they're doing evil things. Like it's such a common trope, especially in animation. And on top of that, like she says that, and everyone's just okay with it. Like, no, that's not how a redemption arc is done. You take something like, Sam Rockwell's character in Free Billboards or Zuko in The Last Airbender. Those characters have to redeem themselves. Those characters have to do something to actually prove that they've changed as a person. Like Sam Rockwell gets beaten up to get evidence. Like he gets his comeuppance in some way or form, and it helps you resonate with their redemption so much more. But it didn't have to be that drastic for the grandma. Like she didn't have to get beat up or anything, but I needed like something. I needed
Hmm.
more time for the characters to kind of come around to it, so to speak, instead of just being like, "Yeah, it's fine. Story's over. It's fine. We gotta wrap this up. So who cares, right?" And the film just
fair
completely
enough.
lost me in that. It was kind of winning me over in the second act, especially when Bruno was introduced, but as soon as that climax hit, it just kind of lost me again. Like that's Encanto in a nutshell. Had
Well,
me in the first act, lost me in the transition to the second act, had me of the conclusion of the second act and the start of the third act, and then lost me in the conclusion of the third act. So it's a bit of a mess, but
I
it's
think
pretty mess.
maybe it's just that it's fresh in my memory, but I think at the very least, maybe Turning Red did that redemption a little bit better.
I disagree immensely, but
I'm
we'll
sure
get to
you
that
do.
another time. Anyways, I don't have much else to add. What about you guys? Did you have like any major issues with the movie? You guys?
I didn't have any major issues at all actually.
No?
It's not peak Disney. It's not peak Pixar animation.
No.
I just think it's just serviceable entertainment for families. There is a lot of heart to the film. It
I'd
actually
agree with that.
accomplishes that. I think the characters are pretty rich and layered in certain ways. Did they were they fully realized in the end? maybe they could have added maybe about 5 more minutes to you know flesh out their resolutions a little bit more. But I think overall it works pretty well. And I still look at it from perspective of someone who this film is made for. I know this film isn't
True.
being made for 20, 30 something year olds. I think the information
Yep.
presented is meant for a certain age demographic, mostly, with some things in there for adults to comprehend, understand, and extract from the narrative. But ultimately, it's made for children, and I think whatever they're trying to communicate to children was accomplished. You know,
Fair enough.
so
Definitely. No,
I look
yeah.
at it from that perspective. So yeah, I appreciate what they try to do with it, and I think they accomplished most of what they set out to do. So with
True.
that, yeah, I think it works pretty well.
Yeah, I think my biggest nitpick is also its biggest strength, and this is just Disney in general, is that they have this all this immense detail and interesting cultural tidbits and things that they introduce in all these films, going from Moana to Luca to this and Coco, where they take a different culture outside of America and they kind of extrapolate all these intricate details, and then they cram it into a very familiar formula that I've seen a dozen times. But that's also why it kind of works. I mean, Disney is a monolith juggernaut of a company for this reason, but it is made for, kids, and it's meant to be consumable, fun entertainment with kids in mind and for families, so that parents won't mind putting this on dozens of times because their kids will watch it on repeat on Disney Plus. So which is a plus and a minus at the same time. So it just kind of comes out as neutral. I guess me looking into these movies, I might want to see something different or really outside the box, but I know I can look elsewhere for that, and
You know,
Disney
you
isn't
know,
known for that.
uh,
Like
uh,
they want to rely, like parents want to be
uh-huh.
able to put on Disney and expect a certain type of film where it's going to be wholesome, it's going to be
You know,
grounded, and it's going to be a decent time for them and their kids to watch. So that's why it works.
yeah. Well, that this is why I was rooting for Mitchell's versus the Machines, which is Sony
Mm,
Animation, and which was streamed, which is streaming now on Netflix, because it does do things much differently than
Mm,
the way Disney and Pixar approaches the media animation.
well,
I thought that
yeah.
film was a little bit stronger than this, actually,
I'd
not
agree with
just
that.
stylistically, but even narrative wise, and the way the whole narrative was constructed. And they didn't do the formula, the Disney formula. But now I think everybody can tell what the Disney formula is, unless you're a 7 year old and you're just watching because you're just watching,
Your
right?
parents
But
have
I feel
ruined it
like
on
If
someone
you.
you're
who was,
7 and you don't know and you haven't seen this
hmm
story happen a thousand times before, like we have, like we've seen this happen in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. People even older have seen this since the 50s and the 60s.
right?
Going back to Snow White, I think that was the 1930s, or correct me if I'm wrong, and they've been relying on this very familiar kind of formula for literally decades, which is why it works, but also it creates a need and an appetite for something different, which is why I like seeing uh, what Sony has come up with. I haven't seen Mitchell's the Machines, but I really want to, just because I want
Yes.
to see
Well,
what
you
something
should
different
see
Well,
looks
it,
like.
man.
here's how I can
You
I
should
sell
see it.
Mitchell's versus the
I
Machines.
think Illumination Studios takes absolutely all the wrong
Ah,
things from
no.
Disney
Yeah.
and just and I fucking hate everything they make.
Oh God. Yeah. Ever
But
since
I but
Despicable Me, they just went
if
downwards.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is indicator of what you can do in this medium without the Disney formula, then I'm very interested to see what else they do.
Mm.
So I want to see Mitchell and the Machines and just see how else you can approach this type of film.
Now, The Mitchells vs. the Machines is from one of the creators of Gravity Falls, written and directed.
Oh,
So it has that kind
nice.
of vibe to it. I think dramatically the film falls flat on its ass, but comedic wise, the timing, the editing, and all of the lines of dialogue is it's one of the funniest movies I've seen in a very long time. Like
Nice.
it's hysterical at parts,
And
so I
for a little
recommend it.
while we had DreamWorks, and they were coming up with some great stuff that was really
I
different
know.
than what Disney was doing, and
Yeah,
I
and they got they
wish
got
they
they
just
got
kept going.
consumed. They
By
got consumed
Universal.
into the Comcast juggernaut,
Yep.
Ah, yeah.
They lost their soul.
behemoth, behemoth.
But I've got friends who are in animation, and they absolutely love DreamWorks for being not Disney and for having done things differently. But unfortunately, that was very short lived. But I think that there is an appetite for something like that, something a little different outside the box, but still,
Mhm.
families can watch and enjoy. That just isn't the same Disney formula.
Why do you think
So
so many
like,
people like Wolfwalkers? It was kind of like a different appetizer to what Disney was offering.
yeah, and people will even look over to Japan, and like the whole world of anime has something for everybody. It has something for, kids, families, wholesome kind of films, and then extremely degenerate shit.
Like Berserk and
Also,
Neon. Neon
uh,
Genesis.
well, yeah. Well, there's lots of there's a big gradient between those two different ends, but yeah, there's I'll just say there's a much larger diversity of content in the animation world from Japan.
That's true. I'd agree 100%. And what would you guys give Encanto out of 10?
I'm just looking at the Rotten Tomato consensus and score for Encanto. It got 91% from the reviewers, and verified ratings is up to 93% from the audience. Allow me to read what the consensus is. It says Encanto's setting and cultural perspective are new for Disney, but the end result is the same enchanting, beautifully animated fun for the whole family. So basically, it's just Disney pushing out Disney product, right? The
Yep,
same
consume
corporate
product.
sort of
But there was some
output.
hurt in this at least compared to something like Raya and the Last Dragon and, in my opinion, Turning Red. There was some hurt put into this one, at least.
Yeah,
And I'm giving it
but
a
it
6.9.
doesn't stray too far. It is. What did you give it?
6.9 out of 10. Easy.
God damn
I
it!
wouldn't go. I wouldn't go that
Yeah!
low. Like I said, I put it in
I wouldn't
context of
go
who it's
that
made for.
low, low, low,
No,
low.
low,
Sorry,
low.
but no, I think context matters absolutely. I'll give it a lukewarm 7.
You got it.
I'll take it up to an eight. An eight.
Oh,
Nice. Great, mate.
all right,
Alright.
that's
It's
Well,
not
great.
Toy Story.
oh
Um,
no. It's no
sh
Ratatouille, it's no Toy Story. It's not even a Zootopia. I probably like films like that better, to be honest.
sh should we let the cat out of the bag?
Alright, go for it, but I'm not taking per in this.
Ah, this is a very slap happy event, wasn't it?
That
Man.
so you're gonna do a postmortem on the Oscars?
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate that the most noteworthy thing that happened, or at least the main reason people tuned in, is because someone decided to slap Chris Rock on the face, uh,
Well,
for telling a joke.
interestingly enough, according to Mr. Will Packer, who produced the show, apparently the peak ratings was actually after Troy Kotsur had won the Best Supporting Actor award for Coda. That's when they actually had a peak, and then seemingly after Will Smith did his thing, that's when people, went stir crazy in the Twitter sphere and started looking turn the channel to see if they were going to see something dramatic happen or what's going to happen with him in terms of is he going to get up on the stage and do an acceptance speech and what he's going to say in response. So I guess that's the reason why some people might have tuned in following the Troy Cuts peak.
Hmm. And I would have missed it entirely if I hadn't have been like homesick from work. Like I was supposed to be working actually that night, and I wouldn't have been able to catch it at all. I just happened to be there, and even as it was happening, I barely caught it. Like I didn't notice that there was a problem until the audio cut because I was on my phone. We were all like live reacting to what was going on and chatting, and it wasn't until someone else mentioned what had happened that I even realized that there was a problem. So I just barely caught it, even though I was watching it technically. Um,
Yeah, we were watching live. We hosted a little Oscar party. We were watching live, and some of us, as most people, thought it was simply a you know a little
skit.
stage sketch thing that they were doing. But then when he got down and they cut out the audio, and his face went like he had this fiery, intense look on his face, Mr. Will
Hmm.
Smith. That's when we realized, oh, this isn't a joke. And then in the U.S. they do they censor it, right? Because they have that 10-second delay or 5-second delay, whatever amount of time it is.
Yep,
So
yep.
we weren't able to hear exactly what he said, the expletives that he used, but people from Australia and Japan had already posted on their Twitter feed uh, the actual uncensored version, and then you realize, oh damn, it was this intense, it was this bad.
Yeah, and like it's hard to trust what any of these people do because they're literally in the business of deception and acting. But I don't think these people are that good of an actors, so it really felt like an authentic moment. But you couldn't help but see the flood of conspiracy theories coming out saying that this was all planned from the get-go because of the low ratings that the Oscars had, that this was staged. I mean, other than the fact it happened on a stage, I really don't believe it was. But you also can't help but think that there's some publicists looking at this saying, we really got to take advantage of all this notoriety we're suddenly getting, or all this viral sensationalism.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
just
Um,
it. That's
I
part of
would
it.
say the Oscars haven't had anybody talking about it this much in at all in recent time. I mean, you know, there is some benefit to it. Like one of my guests, she's 19. She's This was the first time she ever watched the Oscars, so this was
no
like a
way.
highlight for her. Yeah, she's never seen it. Dude, she grew up in after the 2000s, literally in the streaming era. She grew up in a time when live TV was kind of inconsequential when it comes to consuming content. She grew up in the YouTube, Netflix, Disney Plus, uh, cell
Yeah.
phone era, right? So she consumed content on the go and on pads and through a computer. So
I
live
still
TV
remember the
was
dial-up
live TV is
noise.
not doesn't factor into her content consumption, which is
Crazy.
interesting to me. Which is really interesting to me because what's happening now is that a lot of young people, the younger Zoomers, a lot of the content that they're consuming isn't curated, so they're getting flooded with torrents of information through screens, and which is a good thing and a bad thing because that means because we have now like YouTube and all these other avenues of way to create film content or video content, which means no longer the gatekeepers of the big studios have the monopoly on content that can go out to the world, distribute to the world. Is more democratic now, but it's just so much more stuff that you have to get through to get to the good stuff, right? Because right
Yeah, I
now
mean,
I was watching an Adam Preach episode. They're talking about how you have TikTokers, which are like movie stars to kids these days. Like Hollywood
hmm
is doesn't matter to these generations anymore. They're not like totally captured by the red carpets and the dresses from the House of Gucci and all that kind of stuff and anymore. When I was a kid, when we still had live TV before the internet age, it seems so out of reach. The Oscars seem so far away. The Grammys seem so far away because we didn't have all the digital cameras and iPhones that can shoot in 4K and the internet uh to at the scale it is now, right? So when you watch a red
yeah.
carpet and you look at People magazine in print, you were like so in awe. Oh my God, it seems so far away. It seems something that's so out of reach. So it made it seem as if though you can't get to it, which made it seem more valuable. And then you dream and fantasize about it. So they were like gods to us, right? The movie stars,
Oh
they
yeah,
were
it
like
was
titans.
prestigious. Like way back in the day, people knew nothing about the private lives of these actors. Like it was all like up for speculation. It was
Whatever
all
they
a
want you to
mystery. Like
see.
we
Unless
don't
you're
know
like
what
unless you're like big like if you're like god like let's say like MJ where people are constantly in your business all the time or
Hmm.
the royal family or Madonna, those people at that kind of level, those
well,
huge people like Tom Cruise, like most of the times the other movie stars, you hear little things here and there, but those people they were constantly on them all the time. The press are
oh yeah.
constantly on them,
I
you
think
know.
that's where it really broke open. But I'm talking like way back in like the 1940s when you
Oh
have
yeah.
like people of that era, like you knew nothing about their private lives really. Um, and it was just like speculation and hearsay. But I think in the 80s and 90s, that's when paparazzi media really got invasive, and these actors really started playing to that a little bit to an extent. And these days, the poisonous pull of fame has become democratized on TikTok. So people are
Hmm.
becoming infamous for
Yeah, screw your
dancing
TikTok.
to whatever snippet of a song that is become popular that week. And oh, they shook their ass in a certain way, and they got a million streams because of that, or replays. And this person said or did something that was entertainingly stupid. Uh, so yeah, people on TikTok getting there was oh man, there was a newspaper that was delivered to our house saying how like a local kid was on vacation somewhere and accidentally zip lined into a sloth and that got famous on TikTok. And it's just so weird seeing a newspaper talk about TikTok. Like there's such a weird collide of mediums here, where like newspaper, you think, that's like really old, like dying kind of medium that your grandparents only read still, and then they're talking about TikTok on there. I mean, it's just bizarre, like the kind of overlays that happen here.
The Oscars are always bizarre, man. Bernard, thank you so much, man. You've been a great guest this episode. It's so good to have you back.
No
And
props.
also,
Yeah.
Devin, what are we doing next week? What is our.
Our theme next week.
Oh
Speaking
boy.
of Drive My Car, we're gonna smooth roll right into next week with Drive Ass.
Try
Got that.
fast,
Drive
yes.
Fast, Eat Ass, Part 2.
What is
Hell
going
yeah.
on? What does that mean?
Oh,
Uh,
so we had an episode called Drive Fast, Eat Ass about cars and driving, and now we have a part 2 of that, which will include which films, Devin?
uh, Christine and Titan, and what was the third one?
Taxi Driver.
That was it.
All
Yeah,
I,
we're.
I
favorite
I I
films.
almost thought you were gonna say Duel.
Nope,
Oh, that was considered. That
that was
was
considered,
considered.
but Christine, I think, won in the end over that, which was directed by John Carpenter. I didn't know
Hmm.
that fact until
Hmm.
I picked it up this morning. So can't wait to
And
see
it's
that.
like
I like
it's one of those
Christine.
titles that was such a throwaway title, and it just stuck. Like it was told as a joke, and actually on the cover of the original Drive Fast Eat Ass, I really tried to hide the eat ass part just to make it a little more discreet, like it's a hidden joke, like you wouldn't notice it on first glance.
Well, now it's
But
out there.
yeah.
All right. And also on April 16th, I will be doing my Call of Cthulhu one shot called Deep Within, where a bunch of really adventurers, one of which will be played by Devin King and a bunch of other guests that have been in the podcast before, will be journeying into the lost city of Atlantis and what horrors lie beneath. So look forward to that as well. Also on our Twitch channel, link will be in the description of this YouTube video if you're watching it on YouTube. And last but not least, is the first day. Have a great night, guys. Don't slap anyone out there. Good night.
Hmm.
Thursday, it's Saturday. It got
Have a good
Oh, I'm
postponed.
night.
sorry. Saturday.